Join me today as we talk about the 4 ways to retrain your reticular activation system so that you can vibe with the law of correspondence at a biological level. Welcome back to Universal Laws with Kristy Sturdivant. We are diving in this week into the law of correspondence and the human body, which is really interesting because I came to this thought process this weekend as I was contemplating what to talk about for this month at the law of correspondence. I thought I had a plan in place, but I had a conversation last week with someone about artificial intelligence, and I realized that it is a conversation that is very needed right now because it's everywhere. And I thought about artificial intelligence and where it stemmed from and how I was looking at it in relation to this law of correspondence. And I don't think that artificial intelligence is a true reflection of us as humans. Like, it cannot reflect things back to us, but it is a reflection of almost, or a projection maybe, of what we can step into as humans, because artificial intelligence is basically like the collective brain all gathered into one place that we can all access to find information, make our lives easier, stuff like that, right? And so I was thinking, why why are we not as the human brain there yet? And I was like, oh, it's because we are all operating on this very old system. So if you look at artificial intelligence as like the human brain, like, let's see, like 120 million point oh, like that's the version of artificial intelligence. Us mere humans are like, a lot of us are still operating on like that very first software programming, right? Like, I am running Kristy, like maybe version 3, 4, 5.0, when artificial intelligence is like what I could be running at, or at least like further along than I am. And so that got me to thinking, like, why is my brain not catching up to artificial intelligence enough? Even though I am, constantly on this path of learning and path of growth and everything. And it's because my human body is programmed on this old version for this path of survival. And why is it like that? It's because of the reticular activation system, which is literally the biological bridge between our conscious and our subconscious brain. Thus is how we got back to the law of correspondence, okay? So just follow me. Now, when we are thinking about what we want to create in our reality, we cannot often create what our wildest dreams are because our bodies are like at this like very low programming system to keep us safe and to keep us intact and to keep us going on the same path. It's kind of how we were made biologically, but we have some glitches in our systems that we need to work through. And one of the first things that you can do is to start reprogramming your reticular activation system. Now, when I got into manifestation and learning about this years ago, I learned about the law of attraction, and I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense, but I couldn't quite grasp it until I understood like kind of the science behind it. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I needed to be able to visualize it inside of my head in order for it to kind of process through me so that I could explain it to someone else. And I had a general understanding, but through the help of artificial intelligence and my buddy Gemini, he was able to break it down. They were able to break it down for me in a way that I was like, oh, okay, I got it. This feels like the path, the one last little aha moment that was clicking. And so I had a lot of like I had a lot of time this weekend to kind of think about this and contemplate it and, go back and forth with this supercomputer that has all of this scientific information at its fingertips. And I'm bringing it to you today because I thought it was a really major aha moment for me. And so I wanted to share it. So let's get into the reticular activation system specifically. Now, I'm sure that if you have been kind of in this space of co-creation, manifestation, universal laws, all of this space, you've probably heard of the RAS, right? It is that piece of your brain that kind of you can reprogram to kind of look for things outside of yourself, right? Like you can say, oh, I want to go out and look for yellow cars today. And all of a sudden you'll see all the yellow cars in the world popping up around you, right? That's your reticular activation system, but it's like just very small part of what it can do. And I wanted to know specifically how I could kind of look at this little piece of my body, where it was, and how I could actually begin to uh, reboot my brain, basically, right? Like I've done a lot of rebooting and everything, but the reticular activation system is kind of where this all starts inside of our body. So let's talk about that because whatever is going on inside of our body and our brains and everything is what is reflected out into the world via the law of correspondence. Okay. So I'm going to explain it to you like I understand it because I have my inner vision in my human design, and this is how it goes for me. So the reticular activation system is actually a small little net-like little net of neurons that is right at the base of your skull, right between I think your midbrain and your pons. If you know anatomy, feel free to drop that below and be like, no, it's actually here. That's fine. It is like the pathway, little net that catches what is going on around you. Okay, so when we walk into a room, walk into a situation, walk into someone's auric field, our brain immediately takes in what is going on around us and it kind of filters it in through a survival perspective. So immediately when we walk into a room or a situation, our brain is like, hey, over there in that corner, it's kind of dark and danky. Maybe be aware of that. Over here to the left, that spot on the floor is kind of shiny. It might be slick. Be aware of that. Over there, there is something going on. This person over there is acting kind of off. Be aware of that. And that is what our brain takes in immediately. And that's what it's programmed to do because we are surviving. But the thing is that oftentimes the programs that we're running were not necessary. Well, they were definitely not programs that are ours, right? Our subconscious mind is like programmed through association when we are very young. So maybe you heard your parents talk about this and you subconsciously programmed that. Or maybe you saw something happen like when you were little and it made you kind of nervous or about dark corners in the room. Whatever it was, that is what's running in your background. And if those things are running in your background, they are going to keep you from seeing everything around you, seeing, feeling, experiencing, because it's keeping you in this survival state. It's very fascinating. Okay. And so what it does is it kind of makes this little signal in your head, and it does it through your sight, your touch, your taste, and your whatever the hearing. Your hearing, your sight, your touch, your taste, and your hearing. Okay, the only thing that the reticular activation system does not kind of compute is your smell or your olfactory bulb, which I thought was also very interesting and I did not realize. So when you are going into a room or in a situation, you're getting all of these like neurons firing up in your brain saying, hey, this is what's going on, alert, alert, alert. And then it kind of goes quiet and it kind of settles into your body. And then subconsciously, you are making all of these decisions and actions moving forward based on what this alarm system is doing. And so a lot of us are operating at this level and we don't even realize it, right? We are just going along, going almost on autopilot or kind of moving along through this area and missing out on a lot of interesting or possibilities in our lifetime. So, what we need to do first when we are talking about this whole idea of changing our reality in manifestation and like seeing the external world as something full of possibilities and everything, which is what we want. Consciously, we want like all the opportunities in the world to be open to us. We want like all of the abundance around us to flow into us. We have to start reprogramming this very old and very primal part of our brain. And we have to reboot it. And we have to constantly like give it new things to think about and kind of like look at and kind of reprogram it. So we're like, no, we're not afraid of that dark corner. That dark corner could hold some kind of like magic and mastery in it. So let's not shut it down completely. Okay. So when we want to manually override our reticular activation system, we can do it in 4 ways. Okay. So when we are trying to reprogram our brain, I want you to kind of marinate on these thoughts, okay? So there's 4 ways that you can do this, okay? You can visualize, because our brains can't tell the difference between reality and imagination. Okay, so that's why, when you wake up in the middle of the night from a really, really bad dream, you're waking up and you're like, oh my gosh, it feels so real. And your heart is racing and you have like all of this blood flowing to your body. It's because your brain is like, oh, you are being chased by a zombie or whatever. You need to run and go, right? Our brains can't tell the difference. So it floods our whole system with all of these chemicals and we wake up like on super high alert, right? So one of the ways we want to do that is we want to like train our brains to be like full of super wild, crazy, imaginative possibilities of our life, of what we want our life to be. It's very, very fun. I know it feels, when you're first stepping into this, it kind of feels far-fetched because you're like, that just seems absolutely ridiculous. There's no way. But this is what you have to do, right? Just like it takes like thousands of lines of code to reprogram something. That's what you have to do with your brain, your reticular activation system. You have to look at it as like a computer inside your brain. You have to reprogram it. So you do that through imagination. You also do it through affirmations. And you have to do it through affirmations consistently, but you also have to do affirmations that are not too ridiculously far-fetched from where you are. So try to think of things that are kind of like more closer to what your brain is going to believe, right? So if you are, like fresh out of high school and you're like, I want to be a millionaire and, manifest all this money, that your survival part of your brain might be like, that's not really believable. So we're going to have to go a little bit slower for a little bit longer to do that, right? Sometimes we can do things like that, but it's almost a little bit too far-fetched for a lot of our brains to kind of make that major leap. So you have to start small, right? So like you have to do I am statements always for affirmations. I am a money magnet. And then start looking for ways that money is showing up in your life, right? Don't look, when you're doing these I am statements and these affirmations, you want to look at what you can believe that's not too far-fetched, but what is actually like completely in the realm of possibility, right? So I see this all the time. I am open to new opportunities all the time. I see all the good in people all the time. You slowly start to reprogram, right? We're doing little lines of program all the time. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to tell your brain. You have to put in commands to your reticular activation system. Today, we are going to look for this. Okay, this is where you've probably heard it before about like the yellow cars or the red cars or whatever. I know we recently bought a new car and like my husband was talking about it, and then all of a sudden we saw this car everywhere. There it is. I had never noticed it before in my life, but I told my brain like, "Oh, let's keep an eye out for these cars," and all of a sudden they were everywhere, right? Your brain is a computer. You got to program it to what you want. If you want to see new opportunities all the time, that your brain's gonna be like, got it, and it starts searching for it. If I want to make new friends, I want to be in situations where I can make new friends. Program it into your brain and tell it, and you have to reprogram it every single day, right? You tell it. You have to be certain, like, this is what I want, okay? I think realizing that our bodies and our brains are these computer programs is like really, it's kind of helped me, even though it's like very cold and sterile maybe, but it has helped me be like, okay, like our bodies are like this vehicle where we are moving through the world, and we have to kind of work with it and upgrade it and everything so that we can co-create the reality that we want to see outside of us. So looking at it as a computer is very helpful for me. Okay, so selective attention. And then your last thing is humor. And this is one thing that I had not really heard about until I had my conversation with Gemini. And it said that when we take a situation and we make it humorous, that it kind of like jolts us, our brains, out of the pattern that we are in. And it kind of like makes it go, that's interesting. And it kind of does like a hard reset almost. And so my original conversation when I was coming at this whole thing was like, I was thinking about how the news lately has been like such a downer. And there is this part of me that wants to really kind of know what's going on in the world, obviously, right? Like to a degree. I want to know what the big headlines are. But when I just go through and I just glance at the headlines, it's like a really big downer. And some of it goes into my brain and into my reticular activation system. And like before I even know what's going on, I'm just like, oh, I'm totally sad and upset about everything. So I did this little experiment where I went and I looked at like 3 headlines that I found on the Washington Post. And I was like, I'm going to reframe these and I'm going to make them like a little bit lighter and a little bit far-fetched and more fun so that I can start seeing the positive and so that it wasn't such a downer. And this is where that it was humorous, but it was also like kind of visualizing what I wanted to see in the world. So one of the headlines that I came across was like, the COVID-19 variant is kids are really susceptible to this new COVID-19 variant or something. So whatever like that, right? Like I don't want to hear that. Like that immediately sends like a shiver up my spine even when I say it out loud. So I was like, no. We're going to switch this up and we're going to say that because kids have such a high frequency of love, they are absolutely immune to this new variant of COVID-19. And I was like, oh, that feels much better. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's like the most crazy, naive thing that I've ever heard of in my life. And I can't believe that you are spouting this nonsense out here. But the thing is that it takes all of us shifting that mindset and imagining that and changing our brains in order to see that reality outside of ourselves. The more of us that go out here and like, imagine the best place on earth, the best things happening, the more we're actually going to be seeing that around us. Because as humans, we are supercomputers. We are all like these mega computers that have this opportunity to create the reality around us. So we want to do that. And so even if it sounds off the wall, kind of start switching things around so that you are putting it out there and you're seeing what you want to see in the world instead of just like letting that old program run. I know it might sound a little bit crazy, but it works, okay? So, that is what I've been thinking about this weekend. And I was just thinking about how amazing is it that we as humans have this super brain and this programmable brain in our heads that we can like literally reprogram it and like change it to whatever we want. And then because of the law of correspondence, we can like create that reality outside of ourselves. I mean, that is really kind of the coolest thing ever, right? And it's like bringing the universal laws, in my eyes anyways, to this next 3D level. Like, yeah, this is law. If this is what you think, this is what the reality is going to be around you. So think about that as you are moving forward, and think about those 4 things that the reticular activation system can do for you by using your imagination, doing I am statements, having selective attention for things that you actually want to see around you, program your brain, and then use humor. Mix it up a little bit, okay? It's fun, it's great, and it's exactly what more of us need to do. More of us need to kind of go a little bit silly and put better vibes out there and kind of like start reprogramming our brains. And this is biologically how we can do it. How cool is that? That's all I have for you guys, so I'll catch you next time. Bye.